London, 1857. The city moved to the rhythm of horse hooves and carriage wheels, its streets crowded with merchants, nobility, and beggars alike. On the corner of a narrow cobblestone lane stood a dress shop with no sign above its door, yet everyone in Mayfair knew the name whispered in salons and ballrooms: Amara Ellis. Amara was a seamstress unlike any other. Her gowns carried whispers of rebellion in every stitch, bold colors where pale silks were expected, daring cuts that hinted at modernity. Yet, society never spoke of her. Clients preferred to imagine their gowns appeared as if by magic, ignoring that behind them stood a young black woman with nimble fingers, sharp eyes, and dreams too large for her modest shop. It was late one evening, the gas lamps flickering low, when a man entered the shop, tall, cloaked, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. Amara rose from her work table, wary. Few gentlemen visited at such an hour, and fewer still without companions or introductions. "Miss Ellis?" The man's voice was low, careful, as though even speaking her name risked exposure. She nodded, her heart steady. "Yes. And you are?" He removed his hat, revealing dark hair, tired eyes, and a face she recognized from sketches in newspapers: Henry Whitmore, the Duke of Ashford. Once the darling of society, his reputation had dimmed since a family scandal 2 years past. Rumor claimed he rarely left his estate. And yet, here he stood, in the quiet of her shop. "I was told you could create a gown unlike any other," he said, his words edged with formality. "I require something discreet, unique, and I require it to be done in silence." Amara studied him, aware of the risk. To serve a duke could bring fortune or ruin, should gossip spread of their meeting. Still, she inclined her head. "My work speaks louder than I do, Your Grace. What you ask can be done." He seemed to breathe easier at her answer, though his gaze lingered with something unspoken. He laid a folded paper on the table. A sketch, his own hand, rough but earnest, of a gown he imagined. "I will return after dark," he murmured, as if even the walls might overhear. "No one must know I came here." And with that, he turned, cloak sweeping behind him, leaving Amara staring at the sketch, her heart racing. For in that moment she sensed what she could not yet name. This was not merely a commission. This was the beginning of a secret that might unravel both their lives. The Duke did not return for several days. Instead, his messenger arrived at twilight, carrying a parcel tied with ribbon and sealed with the Ashford crest. Inside lay a folded letter and a new sketch, another gown, drawn with surprising precision for a nobleman. Amara smoothed the paper across her work table, candlelight dancing over the lines. She read the letter aloud, softly, as though the walls themselves might listen. "Miss Ellis, forgive my absence. Circumstance requires that I keep my visits few. I enclose a sketch for a ball gown of silk taffeta, trimmed in Chantilly lace. I ask your guidance regarding cut and drape, for my own hand is insufficient to capture what I envision. With deepest respect, H. Whitmore." Amara allowed herself a small smile. His tone was formal, but she sensed a man more thoughtful than rumor suggested. She took up her pen and replied, choosing her words carefully. "Your Grace, I have received your design. The taffeta you propose will hold shape well, though I recommend ivory satin for the bodice to catch the light. Chantilly lace, if imported from Calais, may delay the work. Should you allow, I will source Valenciennes lace of equal fineness. Respectfully, A. Ellis." The exchange continued in this manner for weeks. Each letter was meant to be about fabric and form, yet beneath the measurements and fashion terms, threads of something more began to appear. "Miss Ellis, your judgment surpasses even that of Bond Street's most lauded tailors. Pray indulge my ignorance. Is the color known as heliotrope too bold for a lady of refinement? I confess, I am drawn to hues that whisper of daring rather than conformity." "Your Grace, heliotrope is indeed daring, yet in moderation it may render the gown unforgettable. It pleases me that you do not shun such choices. Fashion, like life, should not always bow to restraint." And so their correspondence, meant only for commerce, began to wander. The Duke's questions reached beyond fabric to matters of thought and feeling. Amara's replies, though measured, grew warmer. Miss Ellis, forgive boldness, but I find your words linger far longer than mere cloth. I have spent years surrounded by chandeliers and crystal goblets, yet no conversation has held me as steadfastly as your letters. They are a lantern in halls grown dim. Your Grace, it is not fitting that you speak thus. Yet if I am truthful, your letters render my evenings less solitary. I begin to look for your crest with more eagerness than is wise. Let us pretend, at least for now, that this is only business. But they both knew the truth. With each letter, ink and paper were stitching something far more fragile and far more dangerous than gowns. They were sowing the beginnings of a forbidden affection. London's season moved in rhythm with gossip. At Almack's assembly rooms where the chandeliers blazed and the air smelled faintly of perfume and ambition, whispers clung tighter than silk. The young ladies and their mothers chattered not only of suitors, but of gowns. Recently, a curious rumor fluttered through the drawing rooms of Mayfair. Someone of influence was commissioning dresses from a seamstress, not of Bond Street, but of some hidden corner. The Morning Post hinted at it in sly tones. A mysterious hand is said to shape gowns that outshine the most lauded modistes. Who she is remains unspoken, though her patronage must be lofty indeed. Amara read the words in horror, the paper trembling in her hands. Each sentence felt like a thread tugging at the veil she had so carefully sewn over her anonymity. At Hyde Park's Rotten Row, where nobility paraded in fine carriages, a rival's keen eyes were sharper than any blade. Beatrice Harrow, a dressmaker with a Bond Street shop and clients among duchesses, had long prided herself as the sole purveyor of daring gowns. When she saw Amara negotiating with a lace merchant for Valenciennes yards, rare enough to bankrupt a lesser seamstress, suspicion flickered in her gaze. "How curious," Beatrice murmured to her apprentice. "Such fabric would never be ordered without noble patronage. I wonder who lends her such coin." From that moment, Amara knew she was being watched. Letters from the Duke arrived with greater urgency, almost fevered. From the Duke: "Miss Ellis, I beg of you, do not falter now. My family presses me daily to announce an engagement. I cannot yield, not when I have known true candor in your letters, truer than any gilded smile at Almack's. If you will allow it, we shall meet beyond these scraps of parchment. The Ashford Masquerade approaches. There, among masks and music, we may share one moment unmarked by judgment." Amara pressed the parchment to her chest. She could scarcely breathe. To attend the Ashford Masquerade was to risk everything: her livelihood, her reputation, even her safety as a woman of color in London's rigid society. Yet what terrified her more was the thought of silence. To end this correspondence would be like extinguishing the one flame that had warmed her solitude. That evening, another letter arrived. This time, the handwriting was not the Duke's. It was scrawled in a hurried, almost mocking hand. "Miss Ellis, it seems you have acquired patrons of considerable rank. How remarkable for one tucked so far from society's eyes. Do not think your secrets are beyond discovery. London adores nothing so much as a scandal." Amara's hands shook. She burned the note at once, yet the smoke did little to ease her dread. The walls of her little shop felt smaller than ever. Still, when she dipped her pen into ink, she found her hand steady as she replied to the Duke: "Your Grace, your words ask what wisdom forbids, yet my heart betrays me. If courage be my undoing, so be it. At the masquerade, I shall come, not as your seamstress, but as myself, though hidden behind a mask." And so it was decided. The masquerade would be their undoing, or their salvation. Beyond the lace and silk, beyond the eyes of rivals and family, a forbidden affection now waited for its first dance. The night of the masquerade arrived in a whirl of candlelight and music. Carriages clattered down cobblestone streets, bearing lords, ladies, and visiting dignitaries to the grand hall of St. James. Inside, chandeliers blazed like 1,000 captured stars, their glow falling upon gowns of silk, velvet, and lace. The air was perfumed with roses, lavender, and the faintest trace of expectation. Amara's heart raced as she adjusted the golden mask upon her face. It shimmered like a sunrise, hiding her features just enough to keep her secret safe. She had not told her family she was attending. Only one person knew she would be here tonight. Across the room, the Duke of Whitmore stood tall in his tailored coat of midnight blue, his mask a deep shade of ivory trimmed in gold. But more than his attire, it was the letter in his hand, the last she had written, that he pressed discreetly to his chest as though it were the only anchor he had left in the storm of duty. The music swelled, the crowd parted, and then their eyes met. She stepped forward, the world blurring around her until only he remained. He bowed with practiced grace, but when he extended his hand, it trembled ever so slightly. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice low but certain. Her fingers slipped into his, and the touch alone unraveled weeks of distance, secrecy, and yearning. Together, they moved to the rhythm of the violins, the hush of silk, the sweep of velvet, the hush of whispers in the crowd. For though masked, some knew, some always knew. As they twirled across the marble floor, he leaned close, his words brushing her ear like the gentlest confession. "My dearest Amara, I would cross seas and surrender crowns if it meant but 1 hour more with you." She answered softly, words hidden beneath her mask but burning with truth. "And I would risk every rule of society, for I have found in you the only freedom I desire." The music quickened. Applause rippled. But for them, the world stood still. When the final note rang out, he did not release her hand. Instead, before the assembly of peers, rivals, and skeptics, he drew her close, not hidden, not secret, but seen. The whispers would spread by morning, no doubt. Questions would rise, perhaps even scandal. But for tonight, beneath the glittering chandeliers, they chose love over fear. Later, as the night waned, he pressed a folded letter into her palm, sealed with his family crest. "Keep this," he whispered, his eyes steady. "It speaks of a future I dare now to claim." And though she did not yet break the seal, she knew. It was not a farewell. It was a promise. As the final fireworks lit the sky outside the ballroom windows, casting golden sparks over the city, Amara and the Duke stood hand in hand. Two souls, once bound by secrecy, now stood in defiance of it. For theirs was no longer a tale of forbidden letters, but of timeless love, written boldly for all to see. If this love story touched your heart, show some love back, like the video, and subscribe for more. Tell me in the comments, should their love story continue or end with mystery?